Hi everyone. Welcome to our first ever Supply Chain Talk. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to host these weekly talk shows over the next few weeks, where we explore all sorts of topical issues to do with supply chain leadership, but the challenges that we're all facing at the moment in our supply chains. My name is Duncan Brock. I'm delighted to be here to give an opportunity to host these sessions, but also I'm going to learn. We're going to have some great experts who's going to join us from all sorts of elements of supply chain, different industries, different sectors. I'm really looking forward to hearing from them and to learning from them about their experiences and their insights. The first theme we've got today is supply chain leadership. And we've got three great guests that are going to join us from the automotive sector, from confectionery, and also from IT and technology. And we've got three different countries. We've got one from Romania, Poland, and the UK. So we're going to have a real international flavour to what's going on today. Just before I bring in the guests, we want to make this interactive as we can. I know it's always difficult when you're sat there just watching and observing, but if you want to join in the chat, please do use the chat function that you can see is already being added to by some people who are here and joining us today. But also if you've got any specific questions you'd like to ask of the presenters, of the topics, of the points that's been raised, or about anything, please put it in the Q&A. We're really looking forward to every opportunity that we get from you to be able to interact, share, build on the comments and the thoughts that we've got going through. So as I said, the first thing we've got today is on supply chain leadership. But within Supply Chain Talk, what we'll do every week is also pick up a topic of interest, a news story that's come through, and make sure that we have an opportunity to build on the topical issues of today. Just before we go to the first news story, I'd like to bring on my first guest. The first guest is Daniel Inacha from Dacia Group. He's going to come and join us. So Daniel, if you could turn on your microphone and video. Welcome to you and welcome to the first episode of Supply Chain Talk. And Daniel, just before we go into maybe the first news story, what I'd like to do is maybe give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, your role, and what you focus on within your role at Dacia.
Hello everybody. Hello Duncan. Very happy to be with you today, and thank you for inviting me on this international flavor. You said it's the first episode, and I sincerely hope it will be many episodes after this. I personally think this kind of event is necessary in this period because, let's say, before pandemic, it was more easy to meet different people in our activity domain of activity. But today, with the pandemic, but also with let's say geographical barriers, it's more complicated to bring together people around an idea and share difficulties, solutions, etc., and to bring new information, new insights for people watching or listening this kind of event. So few words about me. In my personal life, I'm the husband of a wife with three children, two boys and a girl. And as a professional, I'm now in charge with managing all the supply chain activities related to new vehicle project for Dacia. You know Dacia, I'm responsible for the Dacia range. So you know Dacia Sandero, Dacia Logan, Dacia Duster, and the newly Dacia Jogger. Well, it's a very important, very strategic job I'm doing with my team. We apply a lot of strategies like, for example, design to logistics, supplier localization, also transport flow optimization in order to reduce logistic cost. And when the car is launched on the market, practically we've done a lot of work before in order to optimize its logistic cost. Before my actual job, I was logistic manager for Dacia powertrain and chassis plant in Romania. It's one of the most complex powertrain plant in Renault Group, and also one of the biggest. Globally, I have 20 years experience in Dacia, in Renault Group. Half of my career in supply chain and half of my career in IT. So at the beginning of my career, I was IT manager, IT manager for sales division. Well, implementing a lot of technology. You're talking about technologies. in sales, in after sales, billing software, customer relationship management systems, all of those things. This is pretty much about me. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Daniel. And I said at the top of the show that you're an expert in supply chain. I think you've just underlined that with your experience that's in there. But also, this is going to be interesting to get your sense of the challenges you're facing currently within the automotive sector, because we know there's been a lot of disruption going through. And maybe we'll come on to that in a minute, because I think one of the things we'd like to do is maybe pick a story that's relevant to the moment and sort of link to that. And I think the story that we saw, probably a good one to hang on to today, was one about the Halfords, obviously UK retailer, really struggling with supply chain challenges, which was really impacting their sales. It was a story that was in The Guardian recently. And when we looked at the story, we looked at the what Halfords was saying as being the challenges that they were facing. It was all to do with lack of drivers, lack of technicians, shortages of raw materials, capacity problems in the factory, everything that there was, all was then leading to the ability to not produce, in this case, bikes, while they're facing a significant increase in the market for bikes. So a natural storm of demand's going up, but real problems to actually be able to produce what they need to, and there's significant impact on their sales. And I think if you also look at the story, and I know it's just being shown now, but if you also look further down through the story, I think it also referenced for organizations that were also struggling for, like Dunelm, a furnishings retailer, struggling to get stuff through, Bakover, which was a fresh produce company, struggling. As I said, I know we've seen that in the automotive sector, in other sectors, where these supply chain challenges are there all the way through. So maybe just, what's your take at the moment, Daniel, from you've been in supply chain for a long time. What's your take on what we're facing today, and that sort of culmination of all these issues coming together?
Okay. What can I tell you? First thing, is not a surprise for me. This kind of announcement, I think there are a lot of companies in this situation and to continue to be. From my perspective, I think we are now facing the global economic context. The global economic context is marked by two main factors, two main situations. The first one is we're facing a lot of shortages, and the second one is, I think, an important change in consumer behavior. As you said, sales are going up. And to be more specific, related to the shortages, I will split actual shortages in two main categories. First one is, you have a lot of materials or raw materials or products shortage, like, for example, semiconductor shortage, plastic shortage. I think also in iron raw material shortage, and probably, I know, usually I'm optimistic, but I think at one moment we also have a cardboard shortage, because with all the e-commerce sales, we are using a lot of cardboard today. And the second category of shortage is, I'll call it workforce and services shortage. We have lack of trucks, driver, lack of technicians, lack of truck, lack of vessels, lack of containers. So this is mainly the situation from a, let's say, shortage point of view. And the other element I observe is, and you also mentioned, it's the consumer behavior to change. And I think since the beginning of the pandemic, we are all consuming some goods more than others. For example, for this specific company, I'm sure that during the pandemic, they sold a lot of bicycles. I did the same. I bought a bicycle at the beginning of the pandemic. So there are a lot of people working from home who bought a bicycle either for sport activities or in order to avoid public transport. I told you I did the same, and it is happening the same with a lot of other products, like electronic products, like phone, like game consoles, and a lot of other products. I heard a lot of people saying that at the origin of this context is the pandemic situation. But I personally consider that the pandemic is just one element who contributes, maybe more than others in this period. Other elements I have in mind now is we are let's say a world in development. People are evolving, and we have more and more needs. We are consuming more and more. But I also think of the fact that during many years, you know very well, a lot of companies moved their production facilities from Europe, from America, in Asia, in China, in order to find a lower cost. And in some way, I think we are now facing of a unbalanced situation between the production area and the consumption area. The world is producing a lot of goods in Asia, but it's consuming those goods outside Asia. And you know, to plastically say it seems like there is a narrow road between those two areas, and a lot of cars wants to pass, and practically the result is a traffic jam because the road is too narrow. We have a saying in Romania. I think you also have it in UK. Do not put all your money in one pocket,
Right.
or not put all your eggs in.
Put your eggs in one basket. Yeah.
Yeah. So why? Because this may create some dependencies, and I think now in this situation, in this context, you know, we need a plan B, and it seems that our economical world today and supply chain context today don't have this plan B right now. So this is my how to say, my understanding of the current situation. Now I think the question is how supply chain organization and how companies will react and will take actions to and countermeasures to limit this impact in the future and to face actual disruptions. I from time to time I meet some colleagues, and we share different insights about actual context. And I personally think that the key factor in this equation will be the consumer. So you know, the actual context is not negative for all companies. There are some companies having difficulties, and maybe they lose money. I don't know. But there are a lot of companies that take advantage of this situation, and there are a lot of companies that see their revenues increasing. For example, shipping companies, they show nice revenue this year. Producer in Asia, and a lot of retailers. So there is a picture, you know, like a war, with companies having difficulties and try to solve these difficulties, and other companies don't have difficulties, but contrary, they are in good shape. And I think that if goods consumption will continue to grow, despite even price increase, because you know, I think companies having difficulties, they'll transfer all supply chain over cost in the final price. So I think even despite this price increase, consumption will continue to grow. Things will not change sooner, because well, it won't change sooner. But if the consumption will decrease, I think all the companies will try to communicate, to collaborate in order to have a better situation. So I just read a few weeks ago that some shipping companies, they are making investments for increasing their transport capacity. So I think they don't believe that things will, the situation will change sooner. Or I think they think that the situation will continue to be as it is today for for a long time since now.
And I think what you just done there, Daniel, I think you just shown just how broad this topic is, but also I think what you also just shown is just how long term it is. and some of the fundamental changes that people need to make in supply chains are not just a short-term negotiation and fix or get some more containers. There's actually fundamental shift in the supply chain needed and a reshaping of the supply chain. And I know all organizations that I speak to, everyone's looking at that balance of the global sourcing, the local manufacturing bases, the flexibility that comes with that. And I think that's the theme we'll come back to as we go forward on this in terms of the practices that we need to put in. But really appreciate your insights there. And I want to bring in the other couple of guests if I can, just to sort of add to the discussion here. So we've got two other guests that we want to join us today. We've got Dr. Clive Rees, who works for Fujitsu. So maybe Clive, if you could also turn on your video and microphone. So welcome to you, Clive. And then we've got Sławomir Kluzinski, who is joining us from Lotto Wedel, which is a confectionery company. So we've now got automotive, confectionery, and IT technology, which is great. I'd like the two of you just to do, again, quick intro to yourselves, just so the audience know who you are. But then I want to come back to this topic of supply chain shortages and the challenges there and your perspectives on it. So, Clive, maybe you can go first. Quick intro to yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Duncan. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Sławomir. Hi, and hi, everybody else. So I lead the procurement function internationally for Fujitsu, so all regions outside of Japan, Europe, Asia, Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, obviously, and the Americas. I report into head of global supply chain, Yamanishi-san, who's based in Tokyo in Japan. And I've been in procurement commercial roles for 37 years. I've been working, so quite a while. For the last 8 years, I've been at Fujitsu, obviously based in the UK, and helping our business grow and expand. And Fujitsu in the last couple of years has been through a transformation where we've moved from our traditional products, services, servers and laptops business to a more IT services, helping businesses transform digitally. So there's been a big change in our business, and we've shifted around there. So 8 years in Fujitsu, and then previously I'd worked in financial services, both in the UK and in Australia, and also some years in the public sector in the UK. So very happy to be here and happy to share experiences and learn from the other guys. So thank you, Duncan.
Thank you, Clive. And Sławomir, over to you. I'm not sure if I did your surname justice, but I did the best I could. So, but maybe a quick introduction to yourself.
Sławomir Kluzinski, as you see, Duncan was very close in pronunciation. Hello, everyone. Hello, guys. Thank you for having me here. I think it will be very interesting platform to exchange also experiences and best practices. I'm coming from Poland, from Lotto Wedel, which is part of a very big Lotte group based in Asia, present in many different industries. We are belonging to the part of food sector, which is very dynamically developing today, not only in Asia. In Poland, we are producing, first of all, chocolate. We are 170 years old company, founded by Wedel family, coming from Germany. And we still exist. Probably we are one of the most, if not the oldest company existing in Europe. And we are passionate about chocolate. We are passionate. My role is develop the most competitive supply chain you can imagine. That's my ambition. This is what I do in our business, being a board member, being responsible for manufacturing, for all supply processes and the supply chain.
And maybe just sort of building on this the topic, the news story that we picked up, which is about shortages. I mean, are you seeing the same challenges in your supply chains about shortages and challenges? And I love, Carl, thank you for your comment about the fact you're also passionate about chocolate. I think most people are probably sat there smiling away on the same basis and saying they're in the same place as you. But I mean, back to the supply chain, Sławomir, are you... sort of challenges are you seeing for shipping containers shortages?
I'll answer if you promise that you stop me if I talk too long, okay? So first I have to say that my first problem is that I cannot buy a car as fast as I would like to, because usually it was 4 months, now it's even 9 months. I don't know, Daniel, what is your lead time now?
Now, because I met you and because we know each other, I can propose you something with a very short lead time.
That's great. So this is already competitive, at least supply chain for me. But
yes.
Looking for, that was a joke, of course. Looking for our side here, I will start a little bit back to last year when we had an enormous change with pandemic, when everyone was very much frightened what will happen, and everyone expected the worst. And I have to say now, from the historical perspective, that we couldn't imagine how bad it could be, because the bad is coming. Last year, after a short peak, shortfall, it was in fact a drop of the demand and change of the demand of our products. For example, people who are staying at home couldn't contact with their family, with their friends. They started to eat chocolate tablets instead of buying some gifting products like pralines, like different boxes of chocolates. So that was the first change. Then, of course, we had a lot of different food disciplinary actions which we had to implement in order to be able to produce, to secure our workforce, to make them feel safe, and our customers also feel safe. And we overcome it. We had to shut down for 2 weeks in the factory because the stocks were full. The customers didn't pick up our products. The sales dropped, and then everything reversed. It reopened till last August, let's say, when I start to discover in the supply chain constraints. First of all, coming from machinery equipment. We start to feel shortfalls of as Daniel said just a moment ago, semiconductors, some spare parts, some steering controls. Rockwell, for example, one of the leaders in this type of the business, is delivering us everything later by 3 months. We see also steel, at least steel sold in reels is also delayed. So it impacts our investments. We have a very ambitious plan of investments in our Warsaw site. Therefore, it starts to be complicated. If we add to that some typical changes also, which Daniel mentioned already, that we are that the demand is changing, that the prices are growing, that this changes in fact supply. It makes constraints in corrugated board, for example, in our industry now, in packaging, flexible packaging. We start to discover base materials which are constrained. So it comes further in the supply chain to our suppliers or their suppliers of suppliers. This is a challenge. I think that the recipe here is a proper and supply chain in the sense that it's very flexible. That we benefit from our past, that we have good relations developed with our suppliers and also with our customers, of course, that we have a rigid supply chain, that we have properly developed sourcing strategies, that we can switch from one temporarily having constraints supplier to another alternative suppliers. It will not impact also our cost side, and then it will not impact our customers with loss of the margin because they are dependent on us. So this is one part of the recipe. Another part of the recipe would be that visibility of the issues. And here I will say maybe nothing very extraordinary, but proper S&OP process and sales and operational planning process. Very good communication with both commercial side, but also sourcing side, with proper contingency plans, which we can put up front. Proper strategy, even looking for backwards, will secure us as a second solution. And maybe one example on this if we have a proper strategy and we detect some trends in advance. I don't say about pandemic, but in Poland, since longer time, we had constraint on labor force, not only truck drivers. Today we miss 120,000 truck drivers. Lots of them are working in Great Britain. So Duncan, you should reimburse us now that we can't deliver.
But I'm not sure that's the case though, because we also have 100,000 shortage of truck drivers. So I don't know where they've all gone.
They moved to Amsterdam, after Brexit. But we were planning ahead. We were observing what is situation in the market. We decided for the new strategy already in 2019 for our supply chain, preparing a big program of automation, and we have invested even in the moment of pandemic. So when some companies stopped the project and our suppliers who we promised some contracts, they were contacting us last April, May. They were amazed that we are preparing everything, that we are running the investments. They were working masks, of course. They were coming with proper tests, but we were in our July month, which is the best month for the shutdown. We are still investing, and eventually we're a little bit delaying some projects. But we are here very much responsive to the market, predictive to the market, and we have secured our constraint upfront. That's for the beginning. I don't want to talk too long, but these points are critical, I think, which we touched.
And what you've done brilliantly there, Slawomir, is again talk about that you've got real problems, but the fact that the planning, the strategy, the forward-looking, the longer-term view that you're taking is absolutely right. But I think what's also interesting is both Daniel and Slawomir, you both highlighted it was like some common constraints like semiconductors or containers, which maybe we took for granted that there was going to be capacity, there was going to be issues there. We didn't realise the impact of another industry on our own demand, and we've had that. I've heard that from a number of sectors as we go through. And maybe Clive, we'll give you an opportunity to bring in your perspective here, because you're probably at the forefront of some of the challenges we've got around technology shortages and issues. But are you seeing something similar, or I mean, from Fujitsu's perspective, how do you see things panning out?
Yeah, so I sort of hear what Daniel and Slawomir have said and relate to a lot of it. I guess the thing that struck me through the crisis brought on by the pandemic was, business is all about relationships and how we manage relationships. And some of the themes that I think the guys have touched on, adaptability. We've recovered, we've got through it. It was tough at the start, continues to be a challenge. But we've got through it, and a lot of that is built on existing business relationships, and you lean on the people, and you find out who your real people that you can rely on are, and you help other people, they help you. So I think there's a reciprocal relationship piece that has come to the forefront through this process and this crisis. And some of the points, without repeating too much, but flexibility, adaptability, to get through the crisis, to work about how there are alternative ways, alternative supply chains, alternative and new suppliers that you perhaps wouldn't usually think of that come into the mix or into your consideration, into your strategy. And the great phrase that Daniel used, absolutely correct. The one that so put all your eggs in one basket. There were periods where companies would have sole sourced and thought that was great. You had a big sole source relationship, but I think you've got to have alternatives. You've got to have a contingency plan. You've got to be able to switch quickly if in the event there are crises, or whether it's semiconductors, as we talked about, whether it's suppliers in China or in the rest of Asia. There has to be alternatives. So Fujitsu, I think, has coped well. We've looked at sourcing in a different way. We've made sure that we've got alternatives, and as I said at the start there, I think it's about continuing to recognize the challenges that this brings and making sure that you've developed the relationships with your key suppliers, key vendors that you can trust and you can build on. So all of those themes I think come through. So I think it just echoes what the guys have said already.
And do you think, I mean, you talked about sort of Japanese ownership. Do you think that if Fujitsu is much more culturally the right thing to do to work long-term with suppliers? Because obviously that's been an ethos in Germany, in Japan for a long time. Is that coming through, do you think, within the culture within your organization?
Oh, there's a strong cultural, Japanese culture throughout the business, obviously headquartered in Japan. And yes, we have always looked at long-term relationships with key suppliers, but equally, we are not in a position where we are completely dependent on them. There's always going to be alternatives, and that's the other piece that Fujitsu has done well, I think, in terms of developing alternatives while still maintaining traditional relationships with other Japanese companies and then with other trusted companies around the world. So that's a strong cultural Japanese approach, but I guess a lot of other companies also have that approach as well. And as long as you trust and respect each other, you will stay in a business relationship. If one party starts to, for whatever reason, let the other one down, then you look at alternatives. But those topics were just heightened, I think, through the pandemic and the crisis and the inability of certain suppliers to fulfill their requirements. But absolutely, develop a relationship. If it works, stick with it, but don't get too complacent with it, I think, is the other message.
Yeah, and we're hearing a lot. I mean, it was interesting. We do a survey every year, a salary survey, and we look at the skills going forward. And one of the top skills coming out from the people we're looking for was supplier relationship management skills. Now, that's probably the first time I've seen that at the top of the list of the skill set that's required, and maybe that's reflecting. I think probably what you're all saying is that working relationship with suppliers when times are tough. You need that communication. You need the openness. You need the sharing of knowledge and insights. And maybe you're all in sort of, it sounds like pretty long-term businesses where you're culturally you're really focusing on those suppliers in that way. I mean, therefore you may be seeing out the bumps a bit easier because your suppliers are also being open with you?
I would say that yes, this what we say here is fundamental. It's not only because of this what is happening now, but it's also from even optimization point of view for supply chain, for the cost, for the service, for the customer. Of course, if we assume that we already recognize the need of the customer because it's the beginning of our supply chain job, then looking through the whole supply chain end to end, looking for the bottlenecks, looking for the weaknesses or for the areas which we can optimize the most, we should attack relationships with our suppliers, with our partners. One of the examples from my business is working since longer time with one third-party logistics provider, French company FM Logistics. Maybe you know it. It's present in different parts of Europe. In Poland now, pretty strong, and they do for us distribution. We work with them also in warehousing, in developing how effectively we can serve our customers. In FMCG market, it's a very strong competition in terms of the service and the requirements, especially from discounters, which is the part of the segment which is comparable with the markets, but it's looking for a specific segmented portfolio with the high rotation, and they expect also high margins. So there, they impose on us very tiny time slots when the products should be delivered to them. If you don't, you go out. And therefore, relation with our partner, relying on processes together, looking for improvements. We do lean workshops with our partner. We look for the improvements which we share together. There is optimum for them, there is optimum for us. We also tender, as usual companies do. We tender every 3 years. This time we repeated tender. We chose them again, and we have prolonged tender for another 5 years, taking into account also current situation in the market. So we build this relation, showing longer perspective, giving them trust that they can also invest in our business together.
Right.
This gives stability. This gives trust, which is so important.
And certainly when economy is struggling and has been struggling, suppliers do look for that longer term commitment. And maybe Daniel, bringing you in here because your role is about cost optimization. I mean, how do you see that balance with working with the longer term suppliers, but also looking for alternatives in the market?
Well, we have this strategy to build a long-time relationship with our suppliers, parts suppliers, transport suppliers, and usually we have this strategy to use several suppliers for the same commodity, to have a plan B, as I said before. In my area of supply chain cost optimization, I had an event 2 months ago, and people were surprised when I said that with my team, I'm looking to optimize our logistic cost, logistic cost related to the vehicle, but we are also looking at the supplier performance. Because in automotive, when we are launching a relationship with a supplier, we are launching it for many years, and we're very, very sensitive, very interested to have a performance supplier in terms of quality, in terms of cost, in terms of profitability, because we don't want to search a new supplier every 2 months or every 3 years. I don't know, things like this. So with my team, of course, we are looking for optimizing cost related to the vehicle, but we are not doing this despite supplier performance. We are also looking to preserve a profitable situation for our suppliers also.
And if you're looking forward now, I mean, the whole supply chain situation is changing, it's challenging. You've already touched on a whole range of different aspects there. Let's talk about skills of people, because to try and focus on the changes needed in supply chains. What do you see that the skills are needed now to be, I suppose, a leader in supply chain? What's that breadth of skill set that's needed? And I'll open this up to all of you, really, because I think it's really interesting to get a sense from you as to what you think the skill set is, and therefore for the audience that's here, so to understand maybe where their gaps are that they need to go away and do something about.
Maybe I'll kick off then, and the other guys can add to it. But and I'm talking from a more of a procurement than a holistic supply chain. But I guess what we see and what I see, in the last few years is this very much more of a softer skills requirement for our people to be internal consultants with their stakeholders, their clients in the business, and to understand the business and understand it sufficiently well enough to be able to talk the right language, interpret what people are needing, and then go out into the market to find that. So, we've used a phrase, and it's not my phrase, but we've adopted it, and I think I borrowed it from somebody, but be a business person in procurement, not a procurement person in the business. In other words, understand the business to an extent that you really can help them when you're going into the market to bring in third parties. So that requires a different mindset. It requires a consultative type approach, and that to me is a big ask. But that's what I think our skills and our learning and development should focus on. But let me pose the same comments to the other two guys.
I completely agree with you, Dr. Clive, and I was just thinking that during my previous job and actual job, there are some things that I ask to my people, and I really believe in supply chain have a lot of value. First is anticipation. I think people at every level, operational or management level, should should work with anticipation, because the big enemy in supply chain is the time. We sometime realize that yesterday we should took an action because we need a path today, and it takes 3 days to transport it. So acting with anticipation is actually providing time to take decision more in a calm context, let's say. A second, let's say, skill I am thinking about it, the autonomy is very related to what you said, Clive. It's the capacity to work as a entrepreneur inside the business. It's also having the courage to take some decision. Mostly in this activity, I repeat, probably the time is a very big enemy for us. So sometimes we don't have the time to make a lot of reflections, to analyze all the data and all the details. We have to take some time. We have to take a decision. We like it. We don't like it. We consider it is good. It's bad. We have to have the courage. People have to have the courage to take initiative and take decision. And another characteristic I consider that people in supply chain should have is they have to think globally. When we take some decision, we have to have in mind what are other impacts, what are impacts on the other processes and function in the company, in our suppliers, for our customers, etc. And for me, it's also very important to have profiles which are very evolutive, to people who are not putting barriers, people who want to learn, who want to capitalize on their experience and other people's experience, or people oriented to technology, people not putting barriers in their job or in their thinking.
So we've already built this picture of a super person now who's got these 7, 8 skills. Almost we've probably gone to a pentathlete rather than a triathlete, but maybe we need to get to a decathlete. So, Samir, what else do you look for in the skills, or what do you think the skills are that people need in addition to what Clive and Daniel have added?
Yes, it's not an easy question, and it's a very wide topic. Skills can be different. Can be supply chain skills, can be so-called hard skills, which of course are coming with time, are coming also with education, with the roles you do. So for those who are looking for some answer, I would say try to do many roles as you can, as early as you can, rotate, go, learn, study, get experience. But this will be not sufficient. If we talk about skilled leadership, and we take into account this, what we just said about changing environment, pandemics, just in time is not anymore so as important as so-called just in case, that we are ready for anything that can come. We just touched a couple points. And we have to encourage as leaders. Have to is a wrong word, because generally we say today in the leadership, yes, I can. I want to follow you. It's coming from English Lithan, old language. Its etymology of this word is coming from English Lithan, which is follow me. And this requires a lot of modesty. Also, we see that young generation is very different from older generation. They don't need autocrat. They don't need someone who is just governing like a director. Trust is very much important, which I would underline as a leader. We have to build a trust among our teams. We have to have this new social skills. Even today, SupplyChainTalk is a part of our social skill, that we can talk to each other, that we don't know each other, but we can promote something, or we can just answer some needs, or we can learn from each other. Daniel said, think globally. However, also we have to be locally present. We have to combine two things. We have to be optimistic. We have to have it inside, sort of something which is making people, I can be safe with this guy. And maybe two last things. The first one is in fact the beginning. If you want to be a leader, you have to have a vision. You have to have vision, what will happen when, what is important for the organization. You have to be convinced about that. But second thing for me is prioritization. In today's world, we are so much in this rapid environment, so much information coming to us, so many changing demands, needs, priorities. We have to be skilled to choose right priorities.
Yeah.
And these are for me the plus this what of course Daniel and Clive said, nothing more true. Let our participants choose what they think they should start with.
Yeah,
Let's give them a challenge.
Yeah, and I think we could joke about this, but actually, if I look at when I started my career as to what the skill set is that I need, and the skill set is needed now to be the modern supply chain professional, it is that breadth that you all talked about, and it is the functional skills and the business skills coming together, and they're really challenging. And I think as we go through these supply chain talks, we're going to dig into some of those topics. But we actually have one question that I want to just maybe flick across to, because here's another aspect of supply chain. How do you encourage more inclusion and diversity in the supply chain and the people that you work with? And this has come from Trudy, but I mean, I think it's really interesting aspect we haven't touched on yet, because that's also the forward-looking, I suppose, the impact that you can make in the supply chain by encouraging more inclusion and diversity. What's your comment on that?
I can offer a brief comment and then pass it to the other guys. As I think you said, it was Trudy. I think it's a bit more than encouraging. I think unless you build it into your processes, to your criteria for selection of new partners, new suppliers, then it becomes talk rather than action. So I think it has to be part of what we do, not just an aspiration, would be my view.
It also depends on what we believe, I would add. If this is inside of us, respect for others, ability to listen, not to talk only, ability to admit to your own, let's say, mistakes, that makes people that they feel inclusive, that they can join, they can contribute. Also about diversity, if we believe that diversity is adding value, then every day we will be promoting it by our own decisions, projects, creating proper groups. For example, our company this year was awarded for the best ratio of female and male workers. We have let's say Pareto now, not Pareto. In English we say parity, right?
Parity, yeah.
We have a proper level. So these are the small things which we can do every day, starting from our own. We can also create some programs, but the best if people in the company would like to start by themselves, not only from the top, but also doing it by their own initiative. This will happen only if we encourage them by our own being, by creating the atmosphere, creating the environment, promoting this. And then I always say that in such an environment, the company can deliver 10% more than other companies because it's added value. And one more comment about this, what I started, that I try to create the most competitive supply chain. This is the area where is our future, because the products, whether this is computer, whether this is maybe not iPhone, but computer and other products, they are similar. Chocolate can be also similar, right? The difference to our customers will be a really competitive supply chain in the future.
I had the pleasure of interviewing the CPO from Ferrero recently at a conference, and it's also very interesting, very different perspective, but also his own take on the supply chain and the focus and the need to sort of take a different view of it as it goes forward. But maybe that's another topic. We used to have a whole sort of discussion around chocolate because it seems to be a very popular thing to talk about, Slawomir. So, but I'm also very.
I agree. Eat as much as you can, and I will deliver.
I'm also very conscious that we've run out of time, and I know when we did a discussion before we came on air, we did have probably another 3 or 4 topics we were going to cover, but we're running out of time. And I know there was a question that came in from Emma about our younger people coming up through the ranks looking for a different style of leadership. And I think that could probably also take us another 10 minutes to answer. So I'm very conscious that we're going to run out of time on this session. But I think what's been interesting for me from this is while we've got some different perspectives from different sectors, we've got some very common challenges, and the same challenges around building those relationships, building the skills of the people. But I think what's come through from 2 or 3 of the comments is that taking that longer term view. And the bit that we didn't get to, which I know we wanted to, was talking about investment, because sometimes you can only get to the longer term view if you do invest effectively in your supply chains. But maybe that's another one we have to leave for another day and another topic. But I said I am conscious that we're sort of quickly running out of time. So maybe if I could just thank the 3 of you. It's been an excellent first discussion on Supply Chain Talk. So Clive, Daniel, Slawomir, thank you very much for your insights, your inputs. I'm sure it'll be very interesting for everyone who's been listening to this and to watching this as we go through. So thank you for your time on that. And maybe looking forward, the next episode of Supply Chain Talks that we've got is next week on the 22nd of September. And we're focusing on ethical supply chains. And maybe that's one that we've picked up a few themes here already about sort of diversity, but actually we want to be focusing a lot more about how do you focus on having a truly ethical supply chain, the challenges of modern slavery and child labour, the challenges associated with what do you do when you identify problems and how do you cope and manage those problems as you face them. So that's going to be coming up in the next episode of Supply Chain Talk. But basically, thank you for your time. Thank you for your inputs today,
Thank you, guys.
And really appreciate the discussion that we've just had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.